everyone, my name is Alexandra and welcome to Creative 404. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce you to some ways you can support this channel and help it grow. There are several free ways in which you can help this channel. You can watch the whole video, like and comment, or subscribe for more content. You can also go to my social media links such as Instagram, Twitter, and my Facebook groups. I love to see what everybody creates, so if you do create something, make sure to tag me. I would love to see what you have. I am super excited. And if you have any questions or if you're having some issues, put it in the comments down below or go to my social media links and try to get ahead of me. Not ahead. Try to get, what is it called? Try to get my attention. I'm very good at answering questions and helping people out. So if you have some issues, feel free to contact me. I am more than willing to help you out. Now, if you really want to go the extra mile, you can buy something from my Etsy store or my Amazon wish list. In the Amazon wish list, anything you purchase there goes directly to me. I go through a lot of disappearing ink and Fray Check, and I just really need those a lot when it comes to these tutorials. I eat them like candy, and I just really would like it. But like I said, this is just an optional thing that you can do to really help out this channel. There's also some other things in there in case you want to buy something else from me. There's a variety of things at different price tags. So if you have the means, please try to support this channel by going to the Amazon wish list, but it's not required. Also, I have an Etsy store called the Doll Apothecary. It's where you can purchase any of the doll scaled fabrics that you need for this tutorial. These fabrics are made specifically for smaller dolls like fashion dolls and small BJDs like MSDs, USDs, and Tinies. You can purchase this for all kinds of different dolls that you need, and the pattern is made specifically to be small enough to look great with these particular dolls. I'm really happy about it. I'm going to add some more things like tiny zippers, buttons, and other materials because my goal is to have this place be the place where you go to customize, sculpt, create anything your heart desires when it comes to the creation and hobby of doll making. Anyway, that's the end of this spiel. Let's get started on the tutorial. Thank you so much for listening. Alright, you're going to print up your pattern, and the link is in the description box below. It is password protected, so you will have to use the password to download this file. Awesome. So what we're doing is we have a basic shirt, a t-shirt, and some jeans. This is the beginning of my basic series for my Sewing for Blythe. Alright, we have here on the side some Fray Check, which is what you're going to need for your jeans. I have here my jeans material. It is a very lightweight jean material. You can find this material in my Etsy store, the Doll Apothecary. It is really nice because it is super thin, and you want it to be super thin. Regular jean thickness is just way too much. You're also going to need a very large needle on your sewing machine. I also have a little bit of decoration. It is just a piece of red ribbon that I want to put on the pocket. I also have here a set of rivets. I'm not sure how these are going to work out. I haven't used them just yet, but I have a nice set of rivets that are also for sale on my Etsy store. I have a very limited amount of supply of these, and I don't think the manufacturer still produces them. So there is that. I also have some white stretchy material. This is just your standard stretchy material. I actually sourced this from an old t-shirt since I just needed a little bit and I just didn't use that t-shirt anymore. It's actually kind of nice. It's not super thin like some t-shirts are. It actually has a decent thickness, so this is going to be nice. I have pre-starched this fabric just to give it some more stiffness so that it doesn't fall in the machine. However, I do use 2 layers of paper underneath so it doesn't fall into the hole where the bobbin thread comes in. I also have a clear snap for the back of this to close. You can use anything from Velcro to zippers, but I decided on a little snap because I like them a little bit better. I'm also going to use a snap for these. I just forgot to add them in my set of stuff. So there's also going to be a antique kind of goldish bronze, I can't say that word, snap that goes on the inside for the jeans. I have matching thread. I got white for that. Now I'm just going to use the gold for the pants, but you can use blue. But I want the nice little contrast, so I got this beautiful looking gold from Silky. It's this number. But I think it's really nice. It's nylon. It's very shiny. I am really excited to use this one. I have used it before. And just some snippers. I also have some other stuff, but this is what I think are the main items you're going to need for this tutorial. So I'm going to cut this fabric. I'm going to cut this out, and we're going to start with the basic shirt. This basic shirt is actually a modified pattern from my mix and match t-shirt design. I just simply added some a closer collar because I didn't like how big my other collar was. And I have just a nice shirt here. I also indicated here some, these are just references. We have a short sleeve, a 3/4 sleeve, and a long sleeve. I also have a collar in this particular set. So that is for, we're going to start with this, but I want to talk a little bit about this as well. For the jeans, we have indicators for the shorts, the capris, ankle length, and then I like to go a little bit longer than ankle length just to give it a little bit of scrunch. I really like that. So I am going to cut this out and cut out some white fabric, and I'll be back. Okay, I have them all traced out. I just wanted to bring something to attention. On the patterns, we have a very light dotted line. I'll make these darker in the final pattern pieces that you'll download. But you can cut them out. You can cut out the seam allowance and trace it on your pattern. So the purple is where you'll cut the pattern out, and then the blue is where you will sew. This is really great if you are a beginner sewer, or if you're like me who have trouble sewing, especially this collar area. I have a lot of trouble sewing that, and the shoulder seams or the sleeve seams. Those are really difficult for me, so for the collar I really wanted it, so I put it on the collar itself as well, so that I know where my seams are supposed to be, where my stitches are supposed to be. Alright, here we are all cut out. I have traced these over the top with the water-soluble ink, or the disappearing ink in the Marc Bagon. And I did it on the front side. But that's fine, you can do it either side. My ink is very good at disappearing. It doesn't stain my fabric, so I'm not too bad. So what I'm doing here is I'm taking it right sides. Since I drew on the right sides, I'm putting them right sides together. And then I'm just going to do the shoulder seam on top. I'm going to put this aside for the collar, and I'm going to flip the sleeves, the long sleeves, on these, so I have the wrong side facing up. And I lost my tape. Alright, I had to go find this tape. But this is my water soluble tape. It is also called Wonder Tape. This isn't off-brand. I had to find a new one because I think my cat took off with my other one. Alright, so what I'm going to do is simply take my scissors and cut the end, because sometimes the end can be not sticky or unsticky. Oh, well, apparently it's going to stick to the paper itself. Alright, let's try this again. I love getting the off-brand because you can get a lot more of it for the same price as you would the on-brand one. I just bought this off of Amazon. Nothing too fancy, so I cut a piece of tape and I'm just going to put it on the edges of the hem, actually, of my sleeve, and we're just going to trim it off. Alright, My desk is actually getting pretty messy. So then you take the backing off the tape and you leave the nice clear tape there. This is water soluble, so once I wash my garment after I'm done, this tape would disappear and you won't have the stiffness because it will start stretching and it won't be as stiff. So I'm going to do that again for the next one. Alright, and then we're going to trim it and pull the backing off. Fold it so that, there we go. And we have this. So I'm going to go to the sewing machine. I'm going to do two things and get rid of this cat hair. I'm going to do the top stitch of the hem of my sleeves. Then I'm going to do the shoulder sleeves here. And I'll be right back. Alright, I've sewn the shoulders and I've pressed the seams open on the back. Now I am going to do the sleeves, but before I do that I'm going to make a mark. Well, I'm going to use purple. I'm just going to mark, so with the wrong sides together I'm going to fold it in half and just make a mark for the middle. I'm going to do the same for the other sleeve. And I'm just marking this middle. Now usually I'll pin these to the sleeve hole, but this time I'm going to baste them because I've been having some issues with pins lately. So I'm going to put the sleeve down facing right sides up. Then with the body facing down with the wrong side facing up, I am actually just going to baste this onto my sleeve hole. And that way it won't, the needles won't interfere. And basting is pretty easy. You just go from one side. And I'm not even going, you don't have to make it, it's not like hand stitching, you don't have to make it super, you know, fantastic. I just, where I would normally put a pin is where I baste. So I'm just going to baste right here so that this flows flat, so this part stays flat, and then baste right here. Oops, come on. You can see this is why you baste instead of using pins, because you end up with better seams and your thread, your fabric won't pucker. Puckering is when you have like these pieces that sort of have a permanent, what is it called, a permanent crease in it because you sewn over it wrong. And like I said, you don't have to be super perfect about these stitches. The only concept is to have it hold down just well enough for you to sew. And that's just what, there's different ways to baste, but this is how I baste my stitches. So I basted this one. I really want this sleeve to be flat. So when I sew it on the sewing machine, I'm actually going to press the sleeve down on the bottom where the bobbin is, and then hold my fabric kind of like this. And then I'm going to sew over the top. And I'll show you this when I'm done. Okay, we now have the sleeves on the shirt. I have actually pressed these down. I've ironed it down so that it's nice and flat. And I just pressed it on both sides, this and this side, so that all of it is nice and flat. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this piece, the collar piece, right sides together. Alright? And not only am I going to press this down so it stays flat, but I'm also going to stretch it a little bit, because you are going to want to stretch this piece a little bit. You don't want to stretch this piece. You want to stretch this piece. And this will give it the length it needs to go across the collar piece. I'm going to baste it down and sew it, and I'll be right back. So now I have the collar on the shirt. It's nice. I haven't stretched out the seam around the body of the dress, so like the front and the back pierces. I did take it and sew on top so that this part, the seam allowance, won't flip up. Not the best job, but it looks good to me. So now what you're going to do is you're going to lie this flat and then gently fold it over like so. And we are now going to do the side seams. So sew along this edge for both sides. Okay, I now have the seam sewed on, and I've gone ahead and pressed down the seams so that they lie flat. Now that I have everything that's nice and flat on the bottom and it's continuous, I'm going to take my washable tape and I'm just going to lay it on the edges here. And flip it in. My tape is slightly larger than my seam allowance, but that's fine. My seam allowance is only a suggestion right now. Okay. One thing that I like to do with this particular tape is make sure that the fabric is lying nice and smooth. There's no lumps, no bumps. And now I'm just going to sew the top of my hem. Here it is with the top hem. You can probably see it. I'm not sure, it's a little blurry, but here it is. Now what I'm going to do is do the back. Because this is a stretchy fabric, I am just going to go kind of in the middle here. So I'm just going to go maybe an inch or two, or maybe like 3 centimeters. Yeah, about 3 centimeters. I'm just going to mark it. 1, 2, 3 centimeters, and I'm just going to sew all the way up to about right there, maybe a little bit further, maybe like 4, I don't know, 4 seems better. I like 4. So about halfway, you're going to sew about halfway up and leave the rest of it unsewn so that you can get it on and off. Now, if you don't like shirts that have that particular style to it, you could just put Velcro on either side and have it open and close real easily so that you can slip your doll on really fast into her clothes. But I like the little extra bit of style to it, so I'm going to sew at least to the middle. Okay, one thing that I like to do to all of my seam allowances is if it's going to show a little bit, even just a little bit on the inside, I like to just clip them. The scissors don't work very well. Let's try these. And just clip it so that it's a little bit smaller. You're not going to clip the strings, you're just going to clip. You're not clipping over the strings, you're just going to clip off the seam allowance a little bit. And that just gives it just a nice little touch where it doesn't show. I did the same to the sleeves, so you can see that I've snipped off a little bit of it so that it doesn't show. Now I'm just going to flip it right sides out. Okay, the right sides are now out. The garment is looking really good. I am absolutely adoring it. So now what I'm going to do is add the snaps, which I don't remember where I put. There we go. Now, the snaps are a little bit bigger than my seam allowance. That is fine. This is a stretchy fabric. And I'm going to put it just under the collar because the collar just has a lot of thickness to it and it's just not going to stay. So, I also want to show you, look how nice, you know, when you do the inner outline of the pattern and you show where you're supposed to sew, you end up with some really, really nice lines. And this means that you did it perfectly, which I am so happy I did. I am excited with how this is going to look. So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to add my snaps. I'm going to sew them. I like to sew the pointy part on the top and then the flat part on the bottom. And I like it to open from with the left side on top. So I'm just going to sew these on. Then I am also going to wash this fabric because not only do I want to get rid of all of my water soluble ink, but I also want to get rid of the tape that's on the inside so that it's nice and stretchy and it's not so stiff. So I'm going to give it a bath and I will see you once everything has dried. And we'll move on to the next part. Okay, in part one we made the t-shirt pattern. You can make it from any type of long sleeve, short sleeve, or 1/4 inch sleeve, or 3/4 inch sleeve. I can't remember what it's actually called. And we did that pattern. Now we are going to do the jeans pattern. The jeans pattern also has 3 options where you can do shorts, capris, or ankle length. Mine are actually slightly larger than ankle length because I like to scrunch them around the ankles a little bit, just to give it a little bit more of a nice feel. If you want it to be just ankle length, just cut it at the ankles and your seam allowance will go up as well. But we are going to do the pants now. The pants, I have special, if you forgot, I have special lightweight denim. I do sell this denim inside my Doll Apothecary website if you want to, but you can also find it at your local fabric store. I'm also using, golden thread so that I can get a good contrast going between this and the denim and the thread. I also have these rivets. These are also sold at the store. I'm not sure how well these are going to go. I haven't used these in a long time. Sometimes I have to super glue them down so that they stay. I have a setter somewhere in my house. I don't know where it's at. But sometimes you can just set these with a metal pin. So I'm going to try to do that. But I have these. I also need a snap. I don't have the antique bronze snaps anymore. I thought I had some, but I don't. So I'm going to add a snap on these as well. Or maybe a hook eye closure. I don't know exactly. But we will see as I go along which will fit the best. So I am going to cut the pattern out. I'm also going to use a water-soluble ink. This is air and water-soluble It's disappearing ink and marked Begone. These I absolutely love. I also have another type, which I seem to have misplaced. I have this type. This is water erasable ink. I got this off of Amazon. It is for darker fabric, so if you're doing black pants, this is a great use. And I also have air and water soluble ink. This is a fine point disappearing ink. So these are felt tips, and then these are like ballpoint or very small felt tips. But I like this one the best. I have the most ease of use with it. They do dry out pretty quickly, so I go through these a lot. You're also going to need some Fray Check, which is going to help the fraying of the seams. As you can see here, it's already fraying just a little bit. So I need the Fray Check for the seams. You can serge the seams, but I hate doing that because it adds more bulk to the fabric, and I really don't want enough bulk. Now also on your sewing machine, you are going to want a Demon needle. So if you are having issues where your sewing machine needle keeps breaking, find a thicker needle, which is the Demon needle. That is also very, very easy. So those are my tips and tricks for the beginning. I will tell you some cool things along the way, but just to get started, I'm going to cut this out now and trace it on here and then cut it off here. Alright, I am back. I have cut all my pieces nicely. They are beautiful. I have the Demon, which I showed you, which is my lightweight Demon. I use that for the front pieces, the pockets, the back pieces. I put arrows on the York. As you can see, it's starting to fray, so I have to put my Fray Check on it still. But the arrow is pointing down so that I know where to put the York. So I do that. You also have the pockets. I added the lining. If you want to, you can make the pockets out of the Demon, and then you don't need this little Demon piece. You just need to make sure to sew it on correctly. I'm going to sew this Demon piece on there and have white pockets because that's how real life jeans are. So I have these for the pockets. I have 3 pieces of the belt / belt loops. I have one is in lining, so that's going to be the inside of the belt. Then you have the outside. And then I might need another piece for the belt loops. It just depends on how many I can cut out of this. I think I need 4 or 5. So I will table that for now. But this is all the pieces for the jeans. I'm really happy with it. They feel so great. I am so happy. So I'm going to take some Fray Check and I'm going to go around all of the edges so that it can stop fraying like it is right here. It's fraying a lot right there. But I'm going to go all the way, going to gently, because I find that when I use this Fray Check, it does darken the Demon when it dries. So I'm going to go over it very lightly because I have very narrow seam allowances on this one. So I got to do it very gently. What else? So I don't know anything else I would like to share at this moment. I think I'm just going to do the Fray Check. I run out of this so much. So if you guys could be a big lifesaver, and if you have the means to it, go to my Amazon wish list and please purchase me some Fray Check. I'm always running out of this. I need it so bad. And it's like the most expensive thing that I buy because I go through like 3 bottles like all the time. Like every week I'm going through like 3 or 4 bottles, and all I'm doing is sewing things for this tutorial. I make a bunch of like stuff that doesn't fit out, like it doesn't work. I've actually worked on this pant tutorial for several months now. Several months. I've stopped and started it several times and finally got a pattern that fits nicely. So be a doll, buy me some Fray Check, please. I hate being a fisher, but I'm broke. This girl's broke. You're probably broke too. If you're making your own doll clothes, let's face it, we're all broke here. But yeah, if you have the means, please share the love. I also really need a lot of these. But whatever. It's not, you don't have to. I just like, if you want to help out, that would really help me out like a ton. Anyway, I'm gonna fit the Fray Check and I'm going to let that dry. And I'll be back in maybe, oh, another tip is if you put the Fray Check on and you don't want to wait for it to dry, you can iron it, but sometimes the iron would warp the fabric a little bit as it's drying. So I like to just let it dry flat. That could take a lot longer, but that's fine by me. I'm just going to let it sit and go do something else for today. Alright, I'm back. As you can see, the Fray Check is nice and dry, but there is a bit of a dark outline where it was. What I really like is that the edges are nice and stiff too, while the inside is still nice and flowy. So I am separating my pieces. I have the top pieces for the belt and the belt loops. Then I have my front pieces for the front. I have my pockets here, and I have my front here. Alright, I'm gonna put this back. Then I have my back pieces. I have my back pockets. I have the bottom portion and the York with the arrow pointing down. Remember, I put the little arrow pointing down so I know where they're supposed to go. So I'm going to do a couple of things in this next step. What I'm going to do, because this is a very involved project, I'm going to do a couple of things. Number one, I'm going to fold the tops of the back pockets. So I'm going to fold them, I'm going to iron them, and then actually, before I do that, so one thing that I like to do when I have knitty things that are really small like this, is I take the pattern and I actually cut out the seam allowance. And in my patterns, I actually add the seam allowance and the where you're supposed to sew into the pattern. So I give you two lines, the outer cut line and the inner sewing line. So I just quickly cut out the back pocket. Then I am going to, just like I did for the t-shirt, I'm going to do the inner piece where I'm supposed to sew. But this is going to be where I'm supposed to fold my pocket. Yeah, I like to use the seam. I don't use the middle piece. I use the outer piece, the seam allowance piece, to trace, because I could use this piece to trace, but I don't really like doing that for some reason, because I don't get it completely in the middle most times, where all the seam allowances are even. So when I use the seam allowance part, I just align it to the edges and everything is even, while you can kind of crook it when it's just the middle piece. So I use the outer piece of my pattern. So I digress. We are going to fold, we are going to fold the pattern like so, iron it and top stitch it with the gold. Same thing for the second back pocket. Then we are also going to put this right faces together, sew along the top, and I should probably do the same thing with this, because this is actually a very finicky piece too, because it's so small. You really want this piece to be sewn on there correctly. And because it's so small, even if you are an avid sewer and you're very good at it, still do this, because it will save you a lot of heartache. There's been so many times where I'm like, oh, I'm okay, I can eyeball it. No, no, no. That never really works out the best. So I'm going to put the pattern where it's supposed to be, and then I'm going to gently outline it. There we go. See how small that is? Oh my god. That is just going to be pain in the butt, but we want realism. That is what I'm aiming for. I'm going to make another pattern that is a simple pant pattern. I have the simple pleated pant pattern, but I want something that is even easier for you to do, and I'll do that later. I'll make that pattern later. It's going to be part of the basics tutorial. Oh, I just outlined that and it was on the wrong side. I should have done it on the other side, because I'm not going to see it when I flip it here and I do at the top. I really want it so that I can do that middle piece top. Screw it, I'm just doing one line. I'm speaking funny because I got something in my mouth. I have my camera way up than I usually do so that you can see everything that's going on. I also clean my nails because I'm really self-conscious about that. I know my nails are usually bad. I'm an artist. They get dirty. I don't care usually, but it was starting to bother me. So I'm going to do this line here. I'm going to align the York with the back part, and I'm going to sew along this all the way across, actually, not just the middle piece, but all the way across. So I'm going to do that. So top of the pockets, the York to the back piece, then I am going to sew I call this the contrast pocket piece, but I mean mentally I call it the contrast pocket piece. So you're going to sew along the outer edge here of the contrast pocket piece. Once you've sewn that outer edge, this becomes the right side. So you need the right side of this here, right side of this here, together. So then you're going to flip it in and fold it. So that's why you need to sew it like that, if that makes sense. I know that's a little confusing. So these are going to become the right side. You sew this to the pocket, this becomes the right side. You're going to sew it, the pocket, what would you call this? The pocket, it's just part of the pocket, the piece of the pocket. This too, because I'm doing the pocket, this too is going to need the inner outline. Why? Because doing curves like this is very difficult to get even. So just by cutting this part out, just gently. I use my X-Acto knife. You can use scissors. Don't use your sewing scissors. Use regular scissors. Be careful while cutting too, because I got a cut here from an X-Acto blade accident. Alright. I'm going to put this on the wrong side of each of my pattern. And I really just need this pocket piece, that curve, because that's going to be hard to sew. Same thing for here. Make sure it's facing the other way so that it's mirrored. Line. And I really just want this curve because I know that's going to be hell to sew. See? So I'm going to put it like this because those are supposed to be the wrong sides. Put this on here. Put this on here. Sew, sew, then flip, right sides together, sew, flip, top sew. Okay? Maybe I'm doing too many steps at the same time. I really don't want y'all guys to be confused because this is a very advanced pattern. It's one of the hardest patterns that I have going for me. The next hardest one is going to be overalls, but pants are pretty hard to do perfectly. I can't tell you how many times I've messed up on pants in my 12 years of sewing, for dolls at least. But that is what we're going to do. So, I'm going to say this one more time. I know it's repetitive. You're probably going, oh, I already know, I know. That's fine. But let's just go over it one more time. We're going to fold the top of the pocket. Sew across the top with the golden thread. I'm actually just going to use golden thread. I'm not going to switch between dark colors and gold for the outline. I'm just using gold. So I'm going to do that to both of these pockets. I'm going to attach the York to the bottom for both of these. That's the back. The front is a little bit more advanced. You first need to add the contrasting fabric to your pocket piece, to the lining. So put your pocket to the lining. Then we flip it so that the lining is facing in, so right sides together. So the pocket entrance, I guess you can call that, you're going to clip the curve, then you're going to flip it in so that you end up with a nice folded pocket, and then sew along the top. And I'm going to leave it right there because there's more that goes to the front, but I've already given you 4 different steps that I'm going to do in this next run. You got it? I've repeated it twice. You got this. I have faith in you. If you don't understand, just do each little piece and then come back to the video and see what I'm doing. But I'm doing multiple steps at once just to make this video shorter. This is already going to be a long video because I have 2 different patterns that I'm doing. So I'm going to do all of that and I'll be back to show you what the next steps are. Okay, I decided to add some decorative items, so I made the pocket have a decorative item. I double stitched the top, didn't really need it, it just needed 1 stitch. I stitched the top of the York, so the York is actually, the seam allowance is going down, and I stitched it down. I did it for both sides. Then I added the pocket to the front, and I added 2 stitches on the pocket opening. Didn't do too good of a job. See, it's all kind of wonky, but I'm not very good at stitching around curves. And I did that for both sides. Alright, I am actually going to put aside the back piece. Now I'm going to go to the front piece. For the front piece, you need to fold the pocket like this. So that this, if you look at the bottom, just make sure the bottom is aligned. And we're going to sew the bottom piece of the pocket. So we're going to sew the pocket closed. Alright. We're going to do that to both sides. So we're going to sew the pocket closed on the bottom. Now this is where you have to decide if you want your snap to be in the front or the back, the closure for your pants. I usually put it in the front. This is what it looks like in the front. This is actually a messed up copy, but this is what it looks like in the front. It can be a little bit bulky, especially with the snap, especially on this scale. I just don't like that look. I want it to be flat in the front, and the back is usually covered by hair or something. So I'm going to actually put the snap in the back. Why is that important? Well, you're going to have to decide where you want the snap and how you're going to lay these out. So after I've sewn these pieces together and it looks like this, you're going to have to figure out the layout of where you're going to assemble. If you're assembling it with the snap in the front, you are going to have to assemble it like this. You're going to put these sides together, and then you're going to do the back butt seam. That is how you do a front snap. So all your pieces are going to look like this when they're done. But if you're going to do a front snap, or a back, no, that's for the front snap, sorry. That's for the front snap. If you're going to do a back snap, you actually have to assemble it like this. So the back is open. So your back pieces are going to be on the outside, and that's how you assemble a back snap. I'm doing the back snap, so this is how I'm going to assemble it. So I'm going to sew close the bottom part of the pocket. Once that is done, I am going to sew the back piece to the front piece, like such. Then I'm going to fold it and sew a top stitch. I'm going to do that to both sides, and I'll be back. I am slowly making a bigger and bigger mess, but here we go. I have my two pieces. I am not going to connect them together just yet. I have my two sides. I added two top lines, two top stitches so that it looks really nice. I haven't removed these from the paper. I've been using 2 sheets of paper between me and my sewing machine as I sew. Because I find that it's been a lot nicer to me that way. It's so much easier to have paper while you're sewing because you can guide it a little bit more. And you can, well, especially with this, even though it's thin, you get very thick seam allowances areas, especially like right here where it's like layer after layer of fabric. And I really have to use the paper to push it through the machine. Yeah, you get some jumping in your stitches, like right here I got a little jump, but it's better than your needle breaking or your stitches just not going through. It just, sometimes you just need a little push, and the paper really helps. Let's see, we got, this thing is going to be cut off. Here we go. So we're going to start doing 2 things now. We are going to fold this pocket. Well, actually, the pocket's going to be the hardest one. What we're going to do is, with the wrong sides up, we are going to take some of the, I guess, what was it called again? Magic something? It's water soluble tape. It's a 2-sided tape, and I am just going to take a bit of it, and I got too much. And I'm going to take a bit of it, and I'm going to put it on the hem. The great thing about this tape is it dissolves in water, so once you wash your object, once you wash your garment at the end, it will disappear. It just turns into like goo and then washes out. So I'm just using that. I like to use it on my hems because it just makes it easier. It kind of like glues it down so that you can just sew it real nice and neat. And you just squish it. I squish it so that it's a nice sharp line. You could use iron-on tape. I don't really recommend it though because I just don't like it, in all honesty. It's a fine material to use, but I'm picky. I'm very picky. I'm a very picky sewer. Probably because I've been doing it so long. I don't know. I think that's what happens when you become a seamstress, is you start noticing small details. Let's see. Yep, that works. So when I put this on, it should, yep, align right. So my seams are nice. If I sew this here, they align nicely on the bottom. So they're about the same length. I didn't mess up in any way. Thank goodness for that. Alright, I'm going to do the top stitch of the bottom. I'm also going to fold these. Oh, I was messing with this earlier. I'm going to remove this real quick. I actually use a very small, not my smallest stitch length. I actually use just a very small stitch length, and it makes it really easy to remove all of this paper because it kind of perforates the paper and it just turns into an easy rippable piece. I'll do the other one some other time, but I'm going to show you this one. So I am going to use the very light lines that are left, and I'm going to iron this flat like so. Do the bottom first, then do the sides. Once I have this ironed flat, I'm going to use my basting. So I have some white stitching paper. I don't know, I was using this for something, I can't remember. Oh, I was using this white for the button on my white shirt. But once I have all of this folded and ironed just nicely, I'm going to attach it to the pants. And I'll do that as a separate, I'll come back to that. So let's just do the bottom hem. Alright, I'm back. We are getting very close to the end now. So remember, I am putting the snaps on the back. If you're putting the snap on the front, you're going to attach these like this. But I'm putting them on the back, so I'm doing this. And I have gone ahead and basted the back pockets. I've ironed them so that they're nice and flat. And then I basted them pretty much where I want them to be. I think they're even. It's hard to tell sometimes on these things. They're about even. I added my red ribbon for a little bit of extra detail. I have also taken the seam allowance off my pattern and traced it for here for the inner piece. I also traced a, I also drew a fly, and I'm going to add a fly there. I'm probably going to add the seam allowance to the back here so that I know where I'm at and I don't accidentally overdo some things. I don't want to go over my seam allowance because I know that these are going to be front facing, so right sides facing. So I'm going to need one. I'm going to need a seam allowance on the back so that when I sew this together, I have one on the back. You might want to do the same for your butt, but I am doing the front. So there we go. Alright, slowly getting messier and messier, but look at this. This is one of the most difficult projects I've ever done, especially making the pattern for it. So I have detailed the fly, and then I pressed the seam allowance towards the fly, so you get this sort of like ledge on the end, and I sewed the top stitch there. Whew. I also sewed the pockets there. They are working pockets, so you can put stuff in them. All of them are working pockets. And now we are ready for the last part of this tutorial, and that is the top piece. The top piece is very simple. We have the inner lining, the front, and the belt loops. Before we get started on adding the top to the base, we need to make the belt loops. So to make the belt loops, you're actually going to fold it in thirds, like so. Actually, yeah. Is it thirds? Did I make this too big? In fourths? Alright, I made it slightly too big, but that's fine. Usually you do thirds, but we're going to actually do it in fourths. So I'm going to make a correction. We are going to first iron it flat like this in half. Then we are going to move the pieces inside like this and kind of make your own bias tape. So we're going to do that. Iron it, and then you are going to top stitch one on one side and then one on the other side. So you're going to have two top stitches, one to hold it closed and then one just for decoration. So you have two lines going down parallel. So I'm going to iron and sew, and I'll be back. Okay, I brought you down a little bit so that you could see this since it is so small. We have the belt loop. So what I did is I used one of these, folded into fourths, sewn each side, and then once it was sewn, I cut it into 2.5 centimeters lengths. So each of these are 2.5 centimeters. There's going to be a good side and a bad side because I pulled off the paper and that ends up getting a bad side. So I have 5 pieces. And we're going to attach these 5 pieces to, actually I probably only needed 4. Because I usually put one on the butt, but I have my snap on the butt. So let's see. We are going to want the bad side to face up. And usually I put one here. I'm going to grab some. These are just temporary because I'm going to baste it. Just temporary, put these there. One here. One here. Then I generally put some right here. This one's going to be a pain in the butt to go through. Oh, and you're all blurry again. And then one here. I'm going to put one on the butt, even though it's going to be off-centered. It's going to bother me, but it's not going to work out without it. So we got to put one there. And then we're going to put the 5th one. I'm going to need to know where that seam allowance is. Where is my back piece? Here we go. I need to know where that seam allowance is, so I'm going to cut the seam allowance off my pattern. And figure out how I'm going to want this. So I'm going to want this one on top, this one on bottom, so I want it right here. Alright. That's where my seam allowance is. So now I know where I can safely put the belt loop. Now I'm just going to put it right here. It's going to be a pain in the butt to do that seam allowance because this is going to get in the way, but I want it to look really cool. So this is only temporary. I'm just pinning them down so I know, because I'm going to baste it. Then I am going, yes, had to think about that for a second. I'm going to align this left side onto here. Now we're only doing the front piece. We could do the back piece too, but I just want the front piece right now of the belt. So I'm just going through and I'm pinning this down. There's going to be a lot of pins on this piece because I really want it to be where it's supposed to be. I've messed up so many times on this at this particular step, and after working so hard on the other steps, to mess up at this step is just heartbreaking, because this is just the last step and it took a while to get here. And last pin. You do want, oh, hold on. Okay. You do want some extra on the back here. You do want that. So, time to baste this and sew it on. I have sewn this twice. I went over this line twice because this is a stretcher area and I really want these belt loops not to come out. So I went over it twice. I ironed it flat upwards, leaving the belt loops down. What I'm going to do is top stitch right along this curve. There's the top stitch. Now you have two options here. We are going to add the lining now. You could either add the lining first and then stitch in these pieces. You can fold in the belt loops last. I've actually wanted to do this. The belt loops are going to be a little longer so that there is an actual belt through. There's some extra room. So I'm gonna get a little comfortable. Time to pin them again and baste it. So pin. Why do I pin and baste? These are, and not just pin, these pieces are already very thick. If you're doing this on your own, you're probably noticing that your sewing machine keeps breaking its needle. That is because this is a very, very thick area. If you're using the thin denim that I have provided in my store, you may not have as much difficulties because this is super thin. And when it's super thin, it means that your seam allowance areas, the thick areas, are not as thick as regular denim. I don't even think it's possible to do this with regular denim. You will have to use a very thin denim so that your pieces just lie flat. Because these are just so small, it's really hard to sew through them. I actually have to force my machine over some of the areas. Alright, I got the pockets now. I got the belt loops. Now I'm going to do the top. Alright, pin this. Pin between here. Yeah. I actually use very thin needles while I sew, but even the thin needles, they add bulk. That's the reason why you baste instead of just keeping the needles there. You're trying to get rid of as much bulk as possible while putting your machine, because this is putting your machine through a lot of stress. And getting rid of the pins, and some machines can't even handle pins. You'll know after a while if your machine can handle pins or not. I use thin pins because I know my machine can handle the thin pins, but not the thicker pins. And I've had this machine since I started sewing, so I know what it can handle by now. I'm actually afraid of the newer machines because the newer machines are made of plastic. My machine is a metal beast. Awesome. So just checking the back. Look at all these pins. Oh my god, that's so much for your poor machine. So I'm going to baste this and then I'm going to sew it twice. I'm going to go over this twice because the belt loops. Alright. Baste and sewing. Commence. Okay, I kind of jumped the gun. Sorry about that. I got really into it and then I forgot I was recording. So I did the top stitch here. I did it over twice. Well, I did the inner stitch for this part. Then I top stitched it once, going over all of the belt loops. I probably should have done the belt loops last. I should have left them down, done the top stitch, and then individually stitched each belt loop onto it. That would have been a lot better. I also added the seam allowance to the back of this piece here on the left added the seam allowance, used it to create this overlap piece, because this is going to go over this piece. So I just added that in there. All right. Then I did an invisible hemline. I actually have the hem hidden underneath this groove. So I've hidden it between the groove right there. You can see it nicely right there, but when you hold it, it's invisible. So next step is we are going to fold this and do the back. I'm probably going to do it this way so that I can go all the way to where this York is. So I'm going to do that real quick. Okay, now that we have the seam for the back, I just went up all the way to the York so that when I snap this, put the snap on the back, it sits right there. We are down to the last step. You may actually, let's snip this real quick. Just give it a couple of snips so that it lies flat on the butt. Awesome. Oh, I lost one. Alright, now I'm going to use some pins. And this is better. I can still use pins on this. I don't have to baste it. The only time I use the basting stitch is when when the fabric is too thick and I don't want to add pins to it. My machine can handle pins. Not everybody's machine can handle pins. If your machine can't, I would recommend using the basting stitch. Basting stitch is just like a running stitch, but you just do it more loosely. You don't have to be super precise about it. It doesn't have to be every single stitch has to be, you know, perfect. It's just a easy stitch to do. Sorry for skipping ahead about on the top. I completely just got into the groove of things, but I hope I was able to explain it well enough for you to understand. And I'm just adding pins along the length here. I like to go straight towards the end first, align the end. I did the middle first actually, and I aligned the middle so that the inseam would be nice and perfect. And then I just sort of stretch this out a little bit, make sure that everything is aligning correctly. This is a very fiddly pattern, so if nothing really aligns, don't worry too much. It's just the inseam. If it aligns like it does mine, be very grateful. I have done this pattern so many times that it is a miraculous that this isn't terrible for once. Alright, I got my pins. Going to do the inseam now, and I'll be back. So I sewed the inseam. It is nice. Did make a small mistake here, so I went around it. I hope it doesn't really change the pattern too much. But yeah, I'm going to snip the bottom. Just give it a little bit of a snip without going over your lines for your stitches. And the moment of truth. I mean, you need to put the snap on it too, but I'm gonna try it on my dog before I do that, because I just spent, I don't know, 3-4 hours making this thing, and I need to know if it fits. And I'm so tired. That's the thing about sewing pants, is that there's so many, especially blue jeans, there's so many steps, and there are a couple of possibilities, but in all the steps and possibilities, you can easily make a mistake, and making a mistake can mean that the entire thing is wasted, and you won't know until the very end. I've done this so many times. I think I'm actually going to modify the pattern a little bit. I don't like how thick the top is. I'm going to give it, how many millimeters? Let's see. I'm probably going to cut it down by 3 millimeters. It doesn't seem like much. 3 millimeters is very small, but I think it will make a world of difference. I like to use my Marc Pagan to turn these out. Sorry for recording turning a piece of fabric, but this is the moment of truth. The moment of truth. Did we do this right or not? Does it fit? Oh my god, pants are so cumbersome. Oh, I don't like how thick that is. I'm gonna fix that in the pattern. Don't worry. Yours is gonna look a lot nicer. Alright. Let's see. Da -da -da -da. It goes over her hips. And her butt. And remember, I made this so that they're slightly longer, so they don't end at her ankles. They end just a little bit, so you've got to scrunch it up a little bit. If you did the one that is the ankles, you won't have to scrunch it. I like it. And here you go. It fits. We did a good job. Congratulations. Going to put the snap in. Probably should have left this belt loop out because it's actually kind of in the way. But yeah. She kind of looks like Steve Urkel. I'm not liking how thick this is. But what matters is it fits, and I am pleased about that. I am super pleased. I'm going to fix this on the pattern. I'm going to remake this entire pair of pants, and I'll show you what it looks like at the very end. See you in a couple of days. Alright, I made several modifications to these pants. Here's the end of the pants. I did change the snap to the front just because I thought it would look nice too. I like it both ways. So a couple of things. The jeans belt for the top piece is only 2 now. I made the belt loops thinner so that they look nicer when they're small. You will fold these in thirds instead of fourths. I also narrowed the waistline by about 3 centimeters. So your belt loop is actually your belt top is actually going to be a little too long. I left it long so that if you make any mistakes around these seams, you have some wiggle room to just snip it off. I also added a cargo pocket for the sides. I don't have it done right at this moment, but I'm going to make some cargo pants. Another thing is I didn't have the extra length because it was starting to take up too much room. So if you want the extra length to give the little scrunched bottom, add a centimeter or 2 to the bottom here. So this is actually the ankle length now. We have the capris, we have the sport shorts or the boy shorts, and then we have the short shorts. But if you want really short shorts, you're going to have to cut part of the pocket pattern off because the short shorts is about as long as the pocket pattern. It's actually a little longer, but once you fold it, it's going to be the same length. So you are going to, once you fold the hem is what I meant. Once you fold the hem, it's going to actually fold into the pocket, and it's going to encase the pocket bottom so that this is the exact length that you can go with the pocket. If you make it shorter, cut the pocket shorter at the same amount. But that is the pattern. I'm really happy with it. I made the top belt part thinner. I don't think the other one is anywhere around me right now. Yes, it is. So I made it thinner. So here's the one that I did the tutorial with. And then here's the new pattern. You can see how much nicer it looks with a smaller top. I am really happy with how it looks. This was just way too thick. It just made it look ridiculously silly. I forgot my little ribbon on the back, which made me a little sad. I didn't realize that until later. I also didn't do the side here like I did here, mainly because this hip poked out so much. It was just a pain in the butt to sew. I'm sure I could still do it. I just didn't want to do it at the time. Here's my very first ones for this particular lot. This is my 5th attempt at this pattern, and it's finally working. It actually fits, so I'm really excited. I have an example here of a short sleeve shirt, and the shorts, as you can see, the shorts are more like a Bermuda style shorts. I think if I took them up a little bit, I think maybe about a centimeter and a half. No, a centimeter. If I took them up about a centimeter, I would really get some cute short shorts. But like I said, you're going to have to cut the same amount from the pocket so that the pocket doesn't stick out, unless you like that look. That look is actually kind of cute as well. But I have my short sleeve shirt. I used my fabric. This is Hello Kitty 1 stretchy fabric from my Doll Apothecary Etsy store. I really liked it, especially with the light washed jeans. I also sell light wash jean fabric in my store. This is actually the medium, and I actually have a darker one as well. I have the white shirt currently being washed. I use recycled jars, and I just shake it and I let it soak. So the white shirt is currently being washed, but I am going to make a cargo pants and do some final shots. So let's see what it looks all together and nice and pretty. So let's go. Hello everyone, this is Editing Alex. I had this whole plan of doing a photo shoot, but then I realized how long this video was getting. If you gotten to the very end, sorry to disappoint, no photo shoot, but here is the password for you to download the pattern and enjoy this tutorial. I really hope you watch the whole tutorial in full before you get to the end, before you even try out this pattern, because it is a very advanced pattern. So here's the pattern. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I really wish you the best of luck. Bye bye now. Bye bye. Thank you. Bye bye.